And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Brian Barry, retired Yale College professor who encountered a being during his near-death experience and is still in contact with him today. Brian, thank you for joining me and welcome. Brian, let's start on the day that this experience happened and go from there.
All right. We're going to go back now to the time when near-death experiences were just beginning to appear in the newspapers. I had an apartment in Yale College. They have colleges like Oxford has them. And I had a house in the country. I was in the house in the country painting polyurethane on the floors on that very rainy day, and all the windows were shut. I knew better, but I wasn't thinking. So I developed a monster headache, got very angry, shouted at my wife, got in the car and drove to New Haven, 20 miles, walked up the stairs, let myself into my apartment, and collapsed unconscious on the floor. And I was there for 3 days and nights. And when I finally recovered enough to crawl to a phone, I went to the medical center, and lo and behold, they said, well, you had a stroke there. Look, we can show you the image. It looks like you have been shot with a very small caliber bullet. But that's what polyurethane does, right back there. While I was lying there unconscious, I had a vision. I was visited by a silver-haired older man. He came in a green light. He got behind me and he lifted me up by my arms, and he flew me to the top of a mountain and took me into a temple. There in the temple, he showed me everything I had ever done, thought, or said. Now, in those days, I had no idea what the Akashic record was, but I soon realized that that's what he showed me. And he didn't have a lot to say. He said, your life has been a selfish rag. And he said it in such a way that it didn't hurt. At the same time, he filled me with a love so complete and unselfish, I didn't have words for it. Since then, I know that people call it unconditional love, but I didn't know that phrase in the 1970s. So when I came back from that experience and began to recover from my stroke, all I really wanted in the world was to be with him again. So I began to pray and to meditate. Now, I cannot tell you who that was for sure. In time, I came to think of him as my inner man, what I really am, and including all that I have ever been and what I am becoming. I'm not going to try to nail that down any further than that. But he stayed with me. He came frequently in my meditations. He helped me sort through the problem that had led to the fight with my wife. She was living a secret life, starving our 1-year-old baby, not feeding him anything but green tea while I was at work. Of course, I had made the rounds at Yale Medical School. And finally, a very wise pediatrician said to me, you really need to see a psychiatrist about your wife. I did, and he knew a phrase which was not yet in official use. Munchausen's syndrome by proxy. It's gotten about now because there was a Netflix movie called Who Will Take Care of Mara? And it's the story of a woman who was starving her child. And that's what I was dealing with. So I had a baby who was still at his birth weight at a year. One thing led rather quickly to another. And when I came back to consciousness, was on my feet again, I jumped into my car and drove from New Haven, Connecticut to Virginia Beach, Virginia. And there I got a psychic reading from a man named Paul Solomon. I was facilitated in this by a chiropractor at the ARE, who found me in the parking lot one morning at 5 a.m. and asked me what I was doing there. And I told him. So in this reading, Paul Solomon said, this baby hasn't got the facilities for assimilation anymore. They've been ruined. Begin by feeding him cow's milk half and half with lime water, which is simply a calcium solution. And I began to do that, and he gained 5 ounces in the first week. So one thing led to another, and in a few months, I invited Paul Solomon up to Yale, where he addressed all the students in the medical school and the nursing school in an auditorium they have there called Fitkin Amphitheater. And I introduced him. At the moment that occurred, I was the public relations director at Yale New Haven Hospital. When I walked up to that lectern, I said, okay, here goes my job. But it didn't work out that way. He impressed them all, and they heard what he had to say. And what he had to say was, everybody in this audience can do what I do, what I, Paul Solomon, do. You all can get answers. You all can be in touch with your creator. And I train people to do that. So I followed him back to Virginia Beach a few months later. I became his student, and then I went on the road teaching his methods. And what are those methods? Meditation and visualization and prayer. Nothing very exotic now in the year 2024, but in 1974, I might as well have been recommending Chinese language meditation. People caught on to it. It changed my life. And as I did that work, and ever since, I have been able to be in the presence of that inner man whenever I go to meditation. And I do that pretty much daily. He led me to lay down my cameras. I was a photojournalist in those days. I laid down my cameras, earned a degree and a graduate degree in school psychology, and then an additional diploma in infant and early childhood developmental evaluation. I earned that from Yale Child Study Center. And I went to work as a school psychologist in an early childhood, early intervention unit. So I don't know whether to call them students or patients, ranged in age from 18 months to 5. And the great majority of them were multi-handicapped, usually as a result of being very low birth weight babies. So we had a pipeline from Yale Medical School to our facility, which was a public school facility in Branford, Connecticut. I loved that work, and I did it for the next 10 years. And it was everything that I hoped it could be. And when a mother came through the classroom door with a child in her arms, I would lean back and honestly go to my crown chakra and say, I need to be now what she needs for me to be. And that was the way I handled that job. I did master the psychological test instruments and the techniques that I was taught, but that was the basis of what I did. Well, those 10 years passed, and then, or midway through, I remarried, having divorced the woman who was starving the baby. And I need to tell you that he recovered 100% and became a healthy, well-functioning adult, but not overnight. Well, with my new wife, we adopted 3 infants from Colombia, one after the other, 3 years apart. And then we moved to Florida, where 3 mestizo little girls with brown skin and black eyes were perfectly welcome, which honestly was not quite the case in Connecticut. So I came down here. I'm in Florida still. And I went to work for the school systems here. And I did that work 26 years until I retired in, let's get this year right, 2010. I have continued to do those meditations. And now I call them readings. That's not a very good word. I do meditations for people, mostly parents, who want help with their special needs children. That's my work. And I love to do it. I do them for grown-ups too who have other kinds of problems. And sometimes I'm able to help them. Often it doesn't work out. I can't explain it further than that. It's a complex process, as honestly healing always is. So I said to you a moment ago, of those for whom I do these readings, about 1 in 4 or 5 actually applies what they get. For the rest, they say, this is too weird. They put it in the kitchen drawer and forget it. And a lot of people do think it's weird. So after, 10 years of doing these things, I have persuaded my family and my wife that I'm not weird. And they've looked at what I do and they've accepted it. That's a big relief, honestly. Because I'm a man like any other man. I need my family. I need my home. I need to be welcome when I come home. I don't need for my 3 daughters to look at me and say, that's my dad, he's weird. So they don't do that anymore. What is that like? It's a meditation. It's the same kind of meditation that I taught people to do all over North America and Europe. It does involve prayer, and it does involve imagery. That's a better word than visualization, which sounds so technical, as if you have to do it just right. No, it's not different from reviewing the route you're going to drive to get home from downtown. You run through some pictures in your mind, and then you're able to drive the route. That's the kind of visualization, the kind of imagery that we use. So in that imagery, I go first to a meadow, and then up the same mountain that my inner man took me, into the same temple, and there I open a book. And that is the Akashic record of the person I am reading for. And then I draw on what talents I may have to so express what I see that they can accept it and go to work with it. Well, that part is my responsibility. And if I were better at it, I wouldn't have one person only in 4 or 5. I'd be batting better than 250 at this point, but I'm not. When people hear about their own deepest attitudes, their own least conscious habits, the first impulse is to say, that's not me. I couldn't possibly be that way. But we all have that part of us. It's called the shadow in Jungian language. It's the part of us that everybody who knows us knows very well is there, but we don't see when we look in the mirror. That's what we get out of that Akashic record. We get, in short, what needs to change. Which of our habits, which of our attitudes is blocking the state of wholeness and health that is ours by right.
I want to kind of go back to your experience.
All right.
First, you define it as a vision.
Yes.
Does that mean that it was dreamlike, or do you feel like you actually got out of your body and went to this place with this being, had some sort of life review?
I experienced it as dreamlike, and I certainly had a life review. And I didn't know that word at the time. And as with most people who have a near-death experience, I came back believing that it was real, even though it had all the attributes of a dream. I think I was able to perceive it because for the last few years preceding, I had been recording all my dreams, not interpreting them, just recording them. And I was a photographer, remember? So I thought, all right, these dreams may be a key to making better pictures that were more resonant. Of course, what came out of that was vastly more important. That's not unusual among photographers in the 1970s. We all wanted to make pictures that spoke of something spiritual. I'll put it that way. And we didn't want to do it by obvious means. We didn't want to photograph ghosts or haunted houses or etc. We wanted to photograph people and nature and have the viewer sense something spiritual about that place or something about that person's soul. I think that's a fair statement for what many of us were doing in the 70s, and that's what I was looking for. What I got was far more wonderful. And so I do teach, train is the word. I train people to follow their dreams, how to keep a dream journal, and above all, how to choose the subject of a dream before you go to bed.
Many near death experiencers will describe their experience as more real than here. Would you say that this vision would be more real than a regular dream or more real than being here?
It wasn't more real in a cinematic sense, but the love I encountered from that inner teacher was the realest thing I had ever encountered. So I'm saying to you that the feelings involved were totally real, and they've remained real. If I had been able to run a movie camera in my head, would it have looked different from other dreams? I don't think so. But the way I experienced it was different.
The way I understand it is, after your experience, you went to go meet with Paul Solomon.
Yes.
Did this being tell you to go meet with him, or what was the
No.
catalyst that led you to go down there?
This wrestle, trying to help my infant son, had utterly worn me out. So when it was time to lie down and go to sleep, I really fell into bed like a drunk. And one time, not long after this experience, I fell into bed, and suddenly there was an Indian man, not a Native American, but a native Indian man. He wore silks, he had his hair in a top knot, and he said, "The answer you need is in Virginia Beach." That's all he said. I looked into his eyes and I trusted him. And I believed, even in the dream state, I believed that he had been sent by that inner teacher who had shown me my record. So I literally got up in the morning and drove to Virginia Beach. Not knowing anything else about it, I sat in the parking lot at the ARE until this chiropractor came out and said, "What are you doing here?" And
Wow.
he arranged for a reading from Paul Solomon, who at that point had a 2-year backlog. So there's a miracle, a real miracle. He did reading for me that same day.
When you do communicate with this being, even today, is it done during meditation, during dreams, or some other time?
It's done during meditation for the largest part. If I get ragged because I'm working too hard, or if I get ragged because I've been ill, then I'm back to communicating in the dream state. But for the most part, I pray first, then meditate. And as I pray, I lay out as clearly as I can what issues I'm praying about, my own or someone else's. And then he comes. And frequently he shows me my record in regard to the problem, or the seeker, that's the person for whom I'm doing this, what his or her record is. Because in my experience, what we learn about the Akashic record from Edgar Cayce is just plain accurate. What we do, what we believe, what we say, it is all there. And I'll put it this way, if we have the clarity to see it. So what does that inner teacher give me? His clarity and his ability to access that record. And I hope and pray that everyone who has a spirit guide gets the same quality.
You mentioned that Paul said that everybody can do it.
Yes.
Can you give us tips to be able to
Oh,
access those records?
first, find out about the Akashic record and begin to form a picture in your mind of what it is like. Some people literally see it as a movie. Others see it as something that's written in a book. Still others experience it as pulsating waves of energy. I think they may be closest to the truth. I see it as a book. And when I pray about it, I literally out loud say, open the book for me, this person, on this issue. Give that person your help. And give it to me in words that I can convey effectively without making myself more important, without mysticism, as plainly and as lovingly as I can. Yeah. A lot of people see the Bible and they look for the record there. Well, I'm one of those people who read the Bible a lot when he was a kid. I've been taught a lot about it, and all that stuff gets in the way. So I don't see it as the Bible. And Edgar Cayce called it a record written on the skein of time and space. A skein is what a weaver winds the thread off. They're weaving with a thread that comes off a spool, and that's what I see. I see a thread coming off a spool being woven into an image of great meaning. I don't even know if that's how he pronounced that word, Skein.
I don't know either. I think that's the first time I've ever heard the word.
I do know weavers. It's a magical process. I've been to Thailand and I've watched women weave extraordinary patterns, complex patterns, 6 feet wide, and do it the way their mother taught them. You know, totally unique every time. And so that to me was a wonderful experience to see that, because they're remembering a vast quantity of information, putting it through their fingers. I love that.
My guess is that your technique for meditation is pretty simple.
Yes, it is.
Can you share that with us?
Yes. I'll sit down. I may do a little yoga exercise to make sure my body is relaxed. And when I can sit down and my shoulders are not tight and my neck's not tight and my legs are floppy, I'm relaxed enough to meditate. I put my left hand up in the palm of my right hand, and I breathe slowly through the nose. I've done it many times. So I breathe 5 or 6 times, and then in my mind, I picture that meadow. I make a tree in it. It's an oak. It's big. I put the grass around it. I see hills beyond it. And then I walk across that meadow, and I see other trees. Some are cedars, some are maples. I create them as fully as I can. Sometimes I'll stand in place and turn around so I can see those things on all sides. It's not like a movie screen. And when I know I've got a good grip on it, and I take myself to the edge of the mountain and I begin to climb. And I go up that mountain, and it has 7 terraces. On each terrace, there's a garden. And each garden has a predominant color. No surprise, it's the same 7 colors we use for the chakras. As I do that, I go slowly enough that I can feel the chakras open. And then I arrive at the summit, and I go into the same temple where my inner teacher took me, and I ask a record keeper in the Hall of Records, which is in the temple, to show me my record or the record of the person or the record of the issue that we're looking for. And then it unfolds. just like a dream, except I know it's not a dream. I know it's not a dream because I've been there hundreds of times, and the information works out. Am I going to argue with the doctor? Oh, I'm really not. Am I going to second guess a doctor? I'm really not. If I go to a doctor and I get a prescription, guess what? I'm going to take it the same way he prescribed it, because that keeps me in a good faith relationship with the doctor and with the medicine. I'm a person who thinks we need to believe in the medicines we take. So I'll go through in my mind whatever it takes to believe in whatever I've been prescribed.
Do you fear death?
No. I've been to the other side so many times. Sometimes it's hard not to look forward to it. I've never had a bad experience. I have seen things that were heavy, but they don't bring me down. I saw more that brought me down in real life as a school psychologist in the inner city, where the kids shot and stabbed each other. That brought me down. But when I see the outcome of a life, I understand why that's the outcome. I understand what that person has done or believed that makes it heavy and difficult. And I know, because I've seen it so many times, we are always received with love on the other side. And whatever we think we've done that's wrong or mistaken or evil, they know exactly how to handle it on the other side. I've never seen someone judged. I don't think in the ordinary course of events that we meet judgment on the other side. I know that's not a fit for hell and all the rest of it. I don't have answers about that.
Do you believe in reincarnation? And if so, why do we come over and over again?
I believe totally in reincarnation, and it figures in almost every reading that I do. It figures in all the work I did as a psychologist. One of the questions I asked when Mom came through the door with that little crippled child is, how did he get here? What choices did he make that caused him to choose this kind of an incarnation? And it's in that form that the answers come. Why do we come over and over? We are a stubborn and disobedient class of people. People don't want to hear the truth if it doesn't agree with their opinions. And that's just, that's part of being human. So yes, we do. We come over and over. I opposed the Vietnam War. I was an active organizer in San Francisco in the mid to late 60s. That cost me my relationship with my family and with my hometown. I was condemned on the editorial pages of the Corpus Christi Caller Times, for example. I had to do it. Something inside me said, as a nation, we should not go there. We need not to do that. So, would I oppose absolutely every war? That's the government definition of a pacifist. I don't know. The war we had is the one I dealt with, see. Why did I have to come back over and over to get to that point? Well, honestly, my last life ended in an airfield in Poland in 1939. I was a Luftwaffe pilot and I crashed. I'd been flying photo flights over Russia just prior to the German invasion of Russia. So I went to the inter-between and I watched the German army invade Russia. But they did terrible, terrible things and did great harm to their souls because what they did was so beastly. And I saw there the very many young men that I had recruited into the army because I was a crackerjack recruiter. And to say that I had regrets would understate the case. I was overcome with regret. So when Vietnam began to blossom into a full-scale war in 64 and 5, those memories came back, and I knew where I stood. So in that case, reincarnation worked for me quite directly. Did I answer your question? I think it's no less direct for everybody. Reincarnation is the seat of our deepest attitudes.
Do you think there is an end point to reincarnation?
The day comes when we don't have to come back. And I used to think, hot dog, someone has reached enlightenment. Now I just say, somebody's graduated from Earth School. And I have said that about a number of people that have so mastered, I'll call them the lessons of this life, that they don't have to come back. They no longer have a grip on them. Nobody I know is teaching that as theology. But I have no problem saying to a person who's record in front of me, congratulations, dear, you don't have to come back.
Well, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
Yes, I am.
What's the best way to contact you?
Email. Please don't send me a Facebook Messenger message, okay? That always goes wrong. Can I give my email? Is that permitted?
Of course.
It's BERRY, B as in Brian, D as in David, at Gmail. And I'll do my best to answer those questions directly. I won't put them through the whole hours-long readings process. And after Tia Renee did that podcast with me, I was buried alive with reading requests. So let's try to handle it almost face-to-face by email.
Before we finish up, can you leave
Yes.
us with one last positive message?
Yes, I can. And I mean it for all of your near-death experiences and all those who have a loved one who's had one, and for all those who tune into this podcast for any reason. You don't have to have a near-death experience to draw close to the Creator. Use your words. Call out. And I won't even say meditate. Get quiet. Say, I want to meet you face to face. I want to feel your love in my being. And then get quiet. You will get an answer. It may not come in the next 2 minutes. It will come, and you will recognize it. So you don't have to have that stroke or that heart attack or that car accident to meet the Creator and see the other side, if that's what you really want to do. Honestly, the other side is not hugely different from the best that this earth has to offer. That's my experience. It's lovely over there. No smokestacks, no traffic jams.
Brian, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. And it's been a pleasure to be interviewed by someone who understands these issues, as you clearly do.
Thank you.
So carry on.
Thank you.
God bless you.
God bless you. Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.